Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at dry data or abstract theories, we're actually embarking on a pretty deep personal journey of self-discovery. So I want you to step into this shared space with me for a bit, because we're going to uncover something that is profoundly common, but honestly, it's rarely ever talked about. We're looking at the hidden weight of growing up too fast. So many of us are walking around carrying this invisible burden, just a quiet, heavy loneliness that's so hard to name. Well, today, we're naming it. And more importantly, we're going to look at how to heal it. Let's jump right in.
So let me ask you this. Were you the kid who literally never got into trouble? The one everyone always praised as being so easy to raise? Maybe you always got good grades, and let's be real, you basically raised yourself, while the adults around you were busy or stressed out or overwhelmed. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a huge compliment, right? But as we start to dig into the psychology here, we find out that this early people-pleasing creates a really heavy, quiet loneliness in adulthood. Because you learned super early on that being low maintenance was pretty much the only reliable way to actually be seen and valued.
Which brings us to our first section, the easy child illusion, or the hidden cost of being low maintenance. If you were that easy child, you've probably been carrying around an invisible suit of armor just to keep the peace at home. You kind of skipped the fun, messy parts of childhood to become this miniature adult. And there are some really clear hidden signs of this, like a broken no, meaning you physically cannot set a boundary without feeling this massive wave of guilt. Or maybe you have a desperate need for external validation. You might have even found yourself acting as the family's security guard, constantly managing the adult's emotions just to prevent conflict. This stuff unconsciously shapes our entire adult lives, leaving us constantly minimizing our own needs. So you weren't just easygoing, you were actually trained to be invisible. Moving into part 2, defining childhood emotional neglect. Basically, it's about what didn't happen. As we go searching for answers, we bump into the core psychological concept that actually explains this deep-seated isolation. It's called childhood emotional neglect, or CEN. Now, the absolute most crucial point here is that CEN is not some loud, explosive disaster. It is the quiet absence of emotional responsiveness. Sometimes, the quote-unquote disaster was simply you being a normal, sensitive child in a home that just didn't know how to handle you. You figured out that your worth was tied directly to being quiet and useful, saving your caregivers from the discomfort of having a messy kid. It's a trauma that's rooted entirely in what was missing. There's this quote from the research that really hits the nail on the head. You don't need a trauma movie to have trauma. I really want you to hear that. Because the most painful part of being an invisible child is convincing yourself that your pain isn't valid, just because it wasn't loud enough. You might look back at your childhood and think, well, my life was fine, it was just boring, I'm wasting everyone's time complaining. But listen, just because your pain wasn't a shouting match or some cinematic disaster, doesn't mean it isn't profoundly real. Your struggle is absolutely valid. All right, section 3, the swan metaphor in action. We're looking at the illusion of calm. This metaphor brilliantly captures how the invisible child navigates adulthood. Okay, imagine you're sitting at a totally normal dinner party, or even just a mundane meeting at work. On the surface, you look exactly like a swan. Perfectly calm, graceful, politely nodding along to the conversation. But underneath the water, you are paddling frantically. Someone across the table just sighs, and suddenly your heart rate spikes. You start scanning the room. Did I talk too much? Is the host annoyed? You've literally become a master detective of micro-expressions. Because growing up, you didn't learn how to read a room from shouting matches. You learned it from silence. You're constantly overanalyzing every subtle tone shift, playing social chess 10 moves ahead just to make sure everyone is happy so that you stay safe. And honestly, it is an incredibly exhausting way to live. Now for section 4, validating your invisible pain. Let's talk about dropping that heavy armor. I really want to take a second to just acknowledge the sheer exhaustion you must be feeling. Constantly believing your needs are a burden, feeling like your mere existence is just wasting everyone's time, that takes a massive, massive toll on you. That suit of armor you've been wearing for decades to protect yourself and manage everyone else around you, it's getting incredibly heavy. Well, it is finally time to put down that armor and begin the quiet, intentional work of healing. You do not have to carry it anymore. Which leads us to section 5, small habits for healing. Time to rewire your nervous system. Healing doesn't usually happen through one giant dramatic breakthrough. It happens through small, daily acts of rebellion against your old conditioning. So here's our roadmap. 4 practical steps to teach your nervous system that safety is actually possible. Let's break these down and see how you can literally start reclaiming your life today. Step 1 is often the hardest one of all. You have to grieve the childhood you didn't get. And I want to be clear, it is completely okay to feel sad about this. You never really got the chance to meet your true child self because you were way too busy acting as a 24/7 security guard for the adults around you. Give yourself permission to actually mourn that loss. It's a vital, absolutely crucial part of this whole self-discovery journey. Step 2 is understanding the huge difference between protection and isolation. See, when we get hurt, our natural instinct is to build a massive brick wall. But a wall keeps literally everyone out, which just leads to deeper, heavier isolation. What you actually need is an emotional firewall. Think about it. A firewall is strategic. It lets you decide exactly how much of someone else's chaos gets into your internal world. It lets you be a supportive friend without being forced into the role of an unpaid full-time therapist. Step 3 is all about breaking the cycle when you feel yourself spiraling into that frantic overanalysis. You know, when the swan is paddling way too hard, that's when you need the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. Let's actually do this mentally together right now. Just slow down for a second. Name 5 things you can see around you. Okay? Now, 4 things you can physically touch. 3 things you can hear. This exercise literally pulls you out of your head and anchors you right back into your body. It signals to your brain's fear center that the threat is in the past, and you are right here, totally safe in the present moment. And finally, step 4. You've got to embrace the radical act of being good enough. This is a direct challenge to all that easy child conditioning. I challenge you to do something small today. Intentionally leave a dish in the sink. Send a casual email with a tiny typo in it. By doing these little imperfect acts, you're actively proving to your nervous system that you do not have to be perfect to be worthy of love and existence. Bringing us to our final section, writing the rest of your story, because you deserve to be seen. Look, you hold the pen for the rest of your story. You were a child who absolutely deserved the visibility, the care, and the grace that you were denied. And even if it didn't happen back then, it can absolutely happen now. I want to leave you with this really provocative thought straight from our source material. What is one small way you're practicing being low maintenance for yourself today? How are you prioritizing your own peace instead of everyone else's? I strongly encourage you to reclaim your narrative. If this explainer resonated with you, share your journey and your answers in the comments, because sharing your experience might just be the exact thing that helps someone else feel a little less invisible. Until next time, take care, and remember, you've got this.